Are you tired of always worrying about something? Do you find yourself overthinking every little thing, like that awkward comment that you made to your coworker, or perhaps the bigger stuff, like, what is my purpose in life? As a chronic overthinker myself, I can relate. When I was a kid, I would worry about everything, from not knowing the answer when I was called in class, to getting lost on the way home and never finding my way back. And as I got older, my anxiety evolved into questioning the decisions that I've made, wondering if I'm doing enough, and worrying that one day I'll look back on my life with regret. This constant worrying made me feel stuck, paralyzed by fear, and overall just pretty miserable. And I knew that I couldn't keep living this way. I had to stop letting my worries control my life so that I could finally start living. And once I learned how to control my worrying, I was able to completely transform my life. And now I found a quiet peace within myself, empowering me to get unstuck. And with a simple pen and paper, you can too. I've been really lucky that I've been working with an amazing therapist who's really helped me manage my anxiety. The two most powerful tools that I've learned in therapy are the worry list and scheduled worrying time. And since I've been using these tools, I've been able to set healthy boundaries with my worrying and finally get my life back on track. And while I think that you can benefit from these tools like I have, this isn't a substitute for getting professional help. These are just tools that I've learned in my own therapy sessions and I've used with my clients. And if you need the extra support, I highly recommend reaching out to a licensed mental health professional. So you might be wondering why these tools are so transformative and powerful. Worrying is something that our brain does naturally. It's a type of protective mechanism that helps us avoid potential threats. It can be helpful, especially if you're in a potentially dangerous situation. For example, you might be worrying while you're laying in bed one night if you turned off the stove. So you get up and check to make sure that you turn the stove off because you don't want to set the house on fire. But it isn't always helpful, especially when you're lying in bed right before a really big day and you're up all night pacing, wondering about how you're going to solve that existential crisis. Our brains are powerful and they're built for problem solving. And worrying is one way that our brains are trying to solve the problems that we have. But it's really hard to tell our brains to stop worrying altogether. It's like trying to get a train to stop while it's going full speed. And while it's really difficult to get a train to stop on its tracks, you can divert it. We can use the same strategy with our worrying. So instead of telling your brain to just stop worrying about whatever it is that you have going on, you can actually redirect it to worry at a specific time of the day. And it's not exactly super convenient to be worrying when you're supposed to be doing something relaxing or having fun. So you can actually tell your brain that you're actually going to sit down and address the concerns, just not right now. And this technique is called scheduled worrying. It's kind of like setting a meeting with your brain so that you can address those worries that you've been having. And the other technique is called a worry list, and it's really simple. It's kind of like a to-do list, except you're writing down all of the worries that you have. Now, these two strategies on their own can be really helpful, but I find that if you combine the two together, they can be especially powerful. Using these strategies together can help you visualize your worries and make them more concrete. Sometimes when you make something more tangible, it becomes a lot less scary. It can also help you bring awareness to what your specific worries are. Do you ever feel sometimes like you're worried about something, but you're not exactly sure what it is, and it could be anything? I've definitely been there, and by using the scheduled worry time and the worry list, it helps me understand which worries are the most urgent and which ones are causing me the most distress. And lastly, these tools are powerful because they can help you get unstuck. Sometimes when I'm really worried and anxious, I just don't know where to start. And so my solution is to just freeze. But using these tools can help you brainstorm solutions so that you can finally start taking action and move forward. And now that we know the two tools that we can use to start setting healthy boundaries, we're going to learn how to do it step by step. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you're setting aside a time and a place to do your scheduled worry list. And make sure that you give yourself a time limit for this, especially when you're first starting out so that it doesn't get out of hand. I recommend 10 to 15 minutes to start. And I recommend not doing this right before you go to sleep, especially if you're prone to rumination like I am. So what actually works best for me is just doing it in the morning when I'm having a cup of coffee. So you decide what's best for you. The second step is to get your supplies. What I love about this exercise is that it's so simple to do and you don't even need any fancy equipment to do it. For me, a simple piece of paper and a pen will do. So I will typically do this in my journal, but you could do this on your phone and just use whatever you have. The third step is to start writing down all of the worries that come to mind. Don't worry about organizing them, just let your thoughts flow freely and without any judgment. The goal here is to just get everything out on paper. My one suggestion is to try being specific. For example, instead of writing down that you're worried about your future, you might want to break that down. So you might write that you're worried about getting a job, or maybe you're worried about having enough money in your savings. And it's totally okay if you need to be more general at first and then go back later and break it down into something a little bit more specific. But eventually, as you get better, you want to try to be as specific specific as you can. The fourth step is to review your list. So you can go through each worry and you can number them according to priority or urgency, or maybe just the ones that are making you feel the most stressed out. What works for me is just going through my worries and then giving it a number. For example, number 1 is going to be the most urgent, and then 10 is something that's not that urgent. Step number 5 is to go through all of the worries and brainstorm potential solutions. Now, you don't have to solve all of your worries in one go. The idea is to just start brainstorming some ideas or action plans for later. And just remember that you can always revisit this later. So when I first started doing this exercise, sometimes I would feel a little overwhelmed, especially if my worry was something bigger, like not having enough money for retirement, for example. If this happens and you start feeling a little bit overwhelmed or you're not exactly sure where to start, try breaking down your action plan into smaller, more manageable steps. So let's take the example of worrying that you don't have enough money in your retirement account. Instead of a really lofty goal like, by the time I retire, I want to have, I don't know, $1 million in my bank account. You can write down that you're going to set aside a specific amount of money every month that you're going to put in your retirement accounts. That way it's a lot more manageable and something you can actually start doing. Step number 6 is one that I feel like is easily overlooked, but don't skip this step. You want to make sure that you're ending this exercise with some sort of closing statement. And the reason for this is because you want to help your brain transition from worrying mode into not worrying anymore. So this is super simple. It can be anything that works for you. For example, you might want to just cross off that you've done your worrying list for the day. What I like to do is write mischief managed in my journal. And the very last step is to do something that's calming and grounding when you're finished. It's important to just take a couple of moments to yourself to help regulate. It can be something like taking a couple of deep breaths, going for a walk, or my personal favorite, which is cuddling with my dog. Now, you might feel better after doing this once, but in order for you to really learn how to set boundaries with your worrying, I recommend practicing this skill and doing it repeatedly. I've gotten to a point where I don't need to do the worry list every single day, but I'm really glad that I have it. So if I need to use it, it's always there. I hope this video was helpful and that you learned something new today that you can take with you. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more from me. And as always, take care of yourself because you deserve it, and I'll see you in my next video.